He did not look like a man who owned anything, and that was exactly how he wanted it. The shop was easy to miss. It sat wedged between a luxury boutique and a coffee chain, its narrow frontage hidden beneath a faded green awning that had seen better decades. The sign above the door read Lin's Clock and Watch Repair in gold letters that had long since lost their luster. Inside, the space was barely 20 square meters, a cluttered workshop of ticking movements, hanging pendulums, and shelves overflowing with spare parts and half-repaired timepieces. Elias Lin stood behind the counter, his apron stained with decades of oil and grease. His hands were steady despite his 70. 3 years' fingers that had disassembled and reassembled thousands of mechanisms, each one a universe of gears and springs and tiny precise miracles. He wore a magnifying loupe on a leather strap around his neck, and when he looked at you through it, his eyes seemed larger than life. He did not look like a man who owned anything. He did not look like a man who mattered. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Grandpa. His granddaughter, Jian Guo, ran through the door, her school backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She was 7 years old, with her grandmother's eyes and a smile that could light up a dark room. I finished my math test. I got 100%. Jian Guo climbed onto his lap, her small hands reaching for the loupe. What is this for, Grandpa? It helps me see the tiny things, he said. The things most people miss. Like what? Like secrets, stories, the truth hiding inside something that looks ordinary. Jian Guo giggled. She did not understand what he meant, but she would. One day she would. They came on a Saturday afternoon, when the shop was quiet and the street outside was crowded with shoppers carrying bags from stores Elias had never entered. His son Jian Guo walked in first, 41 years old, dressed in a tailored suit that cost more than most people's rent. He had the look of a man who spent his life in conference rooms and airport lounges, a man who measured success in quarterly reports and year-end bonuses. Behind him came Manli, his wife. She wore designer sunglasses indoors and carried a handbag that could have fed a small village for a month. Her heels clicked against the worn wooden floor like judgment. Dad, Jian Guo said, not quite meeting his eyes. We need to talk. Elias did not stop working. His hands continued their patient dance with the pocket watch on his bench. I am listening. Manli stepped forward. She placed a glossy brochure on the counter. The cover showed smiling seniors playing golf and swimming in a crystal clear pool, golden horizons where your golden years shine. We've been thinking about you, Dad, she said, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. This shop, it is too much for you, the stairs, the dust, the long hours. She tapped the brochure. This place is beautiful. Private villas, medical care, activities, everything you could ever want, he asked. Jian Guo shifted uncomfortably. The deposit is significant, but we've worked it out. If you sign over the shop, the property, we can use the equity to cover the costs. It is a smart financial move for everyone. Sign over the shop. Just the ownership documents. You'll still live here until the move, but we need to get the paperwork started. Elias set down his tools. He removed his loupe and looked at his son, really looked at him, for the first time in years. And if I say no? Jian Guo's face tightened. Manli's smile froze. Dad, Jian Guo said, we're trying to help you. Don't make this difficult. Elias said nothing. He picked up his screwdriver and returned to his work. The silence stretched. Then Manli grabbed the brochure, shoved it back into her bag, and turned toward the door. We'll give you some time to think about it, she said. But don't take too long. Opportunities don't wait forever. They left. The door chimed behind them. Elias did not look up, but his hands had stopped moving. Jian Guo came to the shop after school 3 days later. Her homework was done. Her backpack was empty. She sat on the stool behind the counter, swinging her legs, watching her grandfather work. Grandpa, she said, "Can I have a cookie?" "In the drawer," Elias said. Second from the left. She also found something else. A folded piece of paper that had slipped out from between the old ledgers. She picked it up, unfolded it, and squinted at the words. "Grandpa, what is this?" "Nothing," he said. "Just old papers. Mommy says you have a lot of old papers. She says they're all useless." Elias folded the document carefully and placed it back in the drawer. "Does she?" Guo nodded. She bit into her cookie. "She was talking to Daddy last night," she said. "Once the old man is gone, we can tear out all those ugly cabinets. They're full of worthless junk." Elias felt something cold settle in his chest. "She said that?" Guo looked up at him, her eyes wide and innocent. "Grandpa, why does Mommy want you to be gone?" Elias did not answer. He pulled his granddaughter close and held her against his chest, feeling the steady beat of her heart, the warmth of her small body. "Some people," he said finally, "forget that the most valuable things in the world are the ones you can't put a price on." "Like what?" "Like time, like love, like the sound of a clock ticking in a quiet room." Guo did not understand, but she nodded anyway, because her grandfather was the smartest person she knew, and if he said something was valuable, she believed him. That night after Guo had gone home and the shop was dark, Elias did something he had not done in years. He opened the old cabinets, not the ones in front, the display cases filled with customer watches waiting for repair, the ones in the back, the ones that had been locked for as long as anyone could remember, the ones that man Li had called ugly and full of worthless junk. He pulled out a ring of keys from beneath his shirt, keys that hung on a chain around his neck, hidden beneath his apron, hidden beneath his whole invisible life. The first lock clicked open. Inside the cabinet were clocks, not ordinary clocks, masterpieces. A Patek Philippe from 1925, its enamel face flawless. A Breguet pocket watch that had once belonged to a king. A Longines chronograph that had crossed the Atlantic on a Zeppelin. Each one was worth more than most people's homes. But the clocks were not the secret. Elias reached past them, to the back of the cabinet to a small metal box that had not been touched in 50 years. He lifted it out and set it on the counter. The key for this lock was smaller than the others, delicate, almost invisible. He opened the box. Inside was a single document, a deed, yellowed with age, creased from folding, but still legible. The ink had faded, but the words remained, words that had been written half a century ago, in a language that was not English, in a hand that was not his. His wife's hand. She had given it to him on their wedding night. She had placed it in his hands and said, "This is my family's legacy. Now it is ours." The deed was for land. Not a small piece of land. The land beneath this shop. The land beneath the luxury boutique next door. The land beneath the coffee chain. The land beneath the entire commercial district. 57 acres of the most valuable real estate in the city. Elias had never sold it. He had never developed it. He had never told anyone about it. He had simply held it, quietly, patiently, like a clock, waiting to strike the hour. When the developers had come, decades ago, offering millions for the land, he had refused. When the city had tried to claim it through eminent domain, his lawyers had fought them off. When his own son had asked about the property, years ago, Elias had told him the truth. The land is not for sale. Jian Guo had stopped asking. He had assumed his father was just a stubborn old man clinging to a worthless piece of dirt. He had no idea that Elias was the largest private shareholder in the very real estate investment trust that owned the entire district, that the developers who had built the luxury towers had done so on land leased from a holding company that traced back to a trust, that traced back to a small clock shop on a busy street. He had no idea that his father was not a poor shopkeeper. He was a king in disguise. Elias agreed to meet. He called Jian Guo and told him he would sign the papers. He asked them to come for dinner. A family dinner, he said. One last meal in the old apartment above the shop before everything changed. Jian Guo was relieved. Man Li was triumphant. They arrived at 7 o'clock, dressed as if they were going to a restaurant instead of a cramped apartment above a clock shop. Man Li carried a bottle of champagne. She had already started celebrating. Elias had cooked. Simple food, noodles, dumplings, vegetables from the market. The same food he had cooked for his wife, decades ago, when they were young and poor and full of dreams. They sat at the small table by the window. Guo was, at her mother's insistence, with a friend, excluded from the adults' business. "Dad," Jian Guo said, pouring himself a glass of the champagne, "I am glad you came around. This is the right decision, you'll see." Man Li nodded, her smile wide and fake. "You've worked so hard your whole life, Mr. Lin. It is time to enjoy yourself. Let us take care of everything." Elias ate his noodles. He said nothing. Jian Guo produced the papers, a thick stack of legal documents printed on heavy paper, bound with a brass clip. The contract for the senior community and the property transfer. "Just sign here, and here, and here." He pointed to the dotted lines. Elias set down his chopsticks. He wiped his mouth with a cloth napkin. He looked at his son. "Tell me," he said, "what will you do with the money?" Jian Guo blinked. "The money? From the sale. Once I am gone. What will you do with it?" Man Li laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Well, Mr. Lin, if you must know, we have debts. A lot of debts. This money will clear everything. And then..." She looked at Jian Guo. "Then we can finally live the way we deserve to live." "Deserve," Elias repeated. "Don't be bitter, Dad," Jian Guo said. "You had your whole life to make something of yourself. You chose to fix clocks in a dusty shop. That is fine. That was your choice. But don't judge us for wanting more." Elias looked at his son. He saw the greed in his eyes, the impatience, the hunger for a life he had not earned. "More," Elias said. "What is more?" "Money," Man Li said bluntly. "Freedom, a house that doesn't smell like oil, a car that isn't falling apart. You wouldn't understand. You've been content to live like a beggar when you were sitting on a gold mine." "Is that what you think?" Elias asked. "That I am a beggar?" Jian Guo shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, I asked you a question." Jian Guo looked at Man Li. Man Li nodded. "Yes," Jian Guo said. "That is what we think." Elias smiled. It was not a happy smile. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass key, the same key that hung around his neck, hidden beneath his shirt. He placed it on the table between them. "What is that?" Man Li asked. "The one you called ugly. The one full of worthless junk." He stood up. He walked to the cabinet, the old battered cabinet in the corner of the apartment, and unlocked it. He pulled out the metal box. He carried it to the table and set it down. "What is this?" Jian Guo asked. His voice had lost its confidence. "Open it," Elias said. Jian Guo opened the box. Inside was the deed. The old deed, the one written in his mother's hand. He read it. His face went pale. This is the deed to the land. The entire commercial district," Elias said. 57 acres, owned by a holding company. A holding company that I control." Man Li snatched the deed from her husband's hands. She read it. Her face went from pale to white. "That is impossible," she whispered. "You are a clockmaker." "I am a clockmaker," Elias agreed. "And I am also the largest private shareholder in the real estate investment trust that built every building on this street, including the building where your husband works." Jian Guo's chair scraped against the floor as he stood up. "You are lying." "I never lie," Elias said. "I just don't talk." He reached into his pocket again and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number and put it on speaker. "Mr. Lin," a voice said. "This is a surprise." "Hello, Charles," Elias said. "I have my son and daughter, in-law here. They wanted to know about my holdings." The voice on the phone belonged to Charles Whitmore, the CEO of the bank where Jian Guo worked, the man who signed his paychecks, the man who decided his bonuses. "Mr. Lin," Charles said, "your portfolio is substantial. The board has been hoping to discuss your plans for the land for some time. The development opportunity." "Not tonight, Charles," Elias said. "But I will be in touch about the divestment." "Withdrawal." Charles's voice sharpened. "Mr. Lin, if you withdraw your capital from the District Development Fund, the entire project will have to be reevaluated," Elias finished. "I know." He hung up. The room was silent. Jian Guo stared at his father. Man Li stared at the deed. Neither of them could speak. Elias picked up the contract, the one they had brought, the one with the dotted lines, and tore it in half. Then he tore it again. Then he dropped the pieces on the table. "You wanted my signature," he said. "Here it is." He picked up a pen and wrote his name on a napkin. "Elias Lin." "Take it," he said. "Frame it. Hang it on your wall. It is the only thing of mine you'll ever own." He stood up and walked to the door. "Where are you going?" Jian Guo asked. His voice was small, broken. "To pick up my granddaughter," Elias said. "She is waiting for me." The next morning, Jian Guo and Man Li woke up to find their credit cards frozen. The house they lived in, the luxury estate, the mansion Man Li had bragged about to her friends, was not theirs. It belonged to a family trust, a trust controlled by Elias Lin. The eviction notice arrived by courier at noon. "You can't do this," Man Li screamed into the phone. "We're family." "Family," Elias said quietly, "does not plot to put its elders in a home to steal their land." He hung up. He did not answer when they called back. He did not respond to their texts. He did not open the door when they came to the shop, pounding on the glass, demanding to be heard. He simply sat at his workbench, his loop in place, his hands steady, and repaired a broken pocket watch for a customer he would never meet. 1 year later, Elias Lin stood in his shop and watched his granddaughter blow out the candles on her 8th birthday cake. Guo had grown. She was taller now, smarter, more curious. She had started helping him in the shop, cleaning tools, organizing parts, learning the names of the different movements. "Grandpa," she said, "what is going to happen to all this when you are gone?" Elias looked around the shop, at the clocks, at the cabinets, at the years of his life arranged on shelves and hanging on walls. "It is all for you," he said. "Every clock, every tool, every secret." "What about the land?" Elias smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small brass key, the same key that hung around his neck, the key to the metal box. "The land is yours too, but not until you are older. Not until you understand what it means to hold something precious without selling it to the first person who offers you money." Guo took the key. She held it in her small palm, turning it over, examining it like a tiny piece of treasure. "I won't sell it, Grandpa," she said. "I promise." Elias pulled her close. He kissed the top of her head. "I know," he said. "That is why it is yours. The shop is still there, wedged between the luxury boutique and the coffee chain. The awning is still faded. The sign still says Lin's Clock and Watch Repair in gold letters that have long since lost their luster. But the people who walk past it now know something the others did not. They know that the old man in the stained apron is not a beggar. He is not a failure. He is not a relic of a forgotten time. He is the man who owns the ground beneath their feet. And every morning before the sun rises, before the city wakes, Elias Lin opens his shop and winds the clocks, one by one patiently. Faithfully, because time, he knows, is the only thing that cannot be bought. And the people who try to sell it, for money, for status, for a bigger house and a faster car, are the poorest people of all. Money is a mirror. it does not create character. Others stand behind cluttered counters in stained aprons and hold the rhythm of an entire city in their hands. The most important thing wealth can give you is not private jet or a penthouse view. It is the power to say no, to walk away, to teach the people who tried to use you that you were never theirs to use. If you've ever been treated like a stepping stone instead of a person, leave the word tick in the comments. The clock is still ticking, and your time, unlike theirs, is not for sale.